Hey guys, I've been having a lot of people ask me this question, so I figured I'd make a video about it. And this is the simplest way to make money with AI, typically running like a small business or, actually implementing something that works. And I'll get into the technicals of it, but the core idea is that we want to convert more leads into customers by using AI to respond to queries instantly. It sounds complicated, but it's really simple. It just means when someone sends you a question or some kind of a query, you reply to it, and then ideally the lead becomes a customer. So the reason why I wanted to make this video was mainly that there's been a lot of talk about an AI bubble. Specifically, MIT released this really interesting paper talking about business in 2025, and the core idea is that 95% of AI pilots basically are worthless. They have zero P&L impact. There's zero return on investment. It's just not great. It's actually a really interesting paper. You don't have to read the whole thing, but the core of it is that most companies are really interested in leveraging AI in what they do. And they've spent a lot of money on it, but they don't really know yet how to actually produce real value for it. Which is also really exciting because what it means is that it's a level playing field. So there's tons of businesses out there. Everyone's trying to, you know, cash in on the AI hype. And a lot of people really believe in the leverage, and I'm biased because I do as well. But most people don't actually know how to produce real value from it. So I spent a lot of time working as a consultant and software engineer, and I have a pretty good sense of what it looks like to increase like the top end of the funnel for businesses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think. So first off, what is a business? How do you actually produce money? Like if you just kind of look at the whole thing as a black box. When I did a lot of consulting work, the core idea was that you want to reduce the company into something that's as simple as you possibly can. And it basically breaks down to these three steps, which is a business is someone finds out about you, they give you money, and then you do something for them. And ideally, two and three, you can just keep doing over and over again. They find you and then they give you money, you do something, and then they like it, so you can keep doing it and they keep giving you money. So this step here, step one, this is basically marketing. You have to forgive my drawing here. But this is how you build a brand, you get people to get interested in whatever you're doing. And then once they know who you are, this is sales. So they actually decide to give you money. Usually what that looks like is the person knows who you are, and sometimes they go in front of a sales rep. Sometimes they don't, like they can just convert on their own. And then you provide whatever the service is that they paid for. Sometimes you actually do three ahead of two, right? So you might do something first, and then if they like it, then they'll pay you. A lot of agencies start work like that. Like that's how they get clients because marketing can actually be the most expensive point sometimes. Like sometimes once you find a lead, you've already spent most of the money and they'll just stick with you. But basically, if you want to make money, you need to apply to one of these three things. So I'm going to probably end up making a lot of videos talking about different ways to do that. But in this case, the simplest way is increasing number two. So what are the odds that someone will actually give you money? And usually the way that people talk about this is that that's like a lead. And then when the lead decides that they're really happy with whatever you have, they go ahead and they give you money and you have a business. So typically what happens is that a lead will actually decide whether or not they want to go with you pretty quickly after asking a few questions. Depending on what you're selling, like again, this is super broad, but let's say, for example, I have a cool SaaS company and someone wants to sign up, but they first want to understand, what are they getting out of this? How does it all work? How much does it cost? Maybe. And usually that's why you have a sales call and the sales director or representative can talk to them. So here's kind of interesting facts about leads. As soon as they give you like a question or a query, if you can respond immediately, then the chances that they'll actually convert into a real customer are way higher. And the bar for this is actually very low. So the core idea here, and I was inspired by this LinkedIn post. It's pretty cool. But basically, for B2B companies, um, if you respond slowly to new leads, you lose a ton of business. You lose a lot of growth. And it, for a lot of companies, just feels unprofessional. But what's cool about that is that you can do an incredible job and you can beat most businesses if you just reply quickly to a new question. So some interesting stats that came out of this. And even I think I read something on Scott Galloway where people, I think he actually hired someone whose sole job, she was getting paid like almost six figures, was as soon as the new lead came out, like as soon as someone signed up, she would call them. And that alone increased the conversion rate by like 200% in that business. So it's really valuable if you can quickly answer a lead's questions, and it does a ton of really good things in terms of building the relationship and also improving the odds that they'll actually buy whatever you're selling. So that's great. How do I do this? Now, what a lot of businesses do is they just hire a person to do this. So if I get an email, right, someone sends me an email, that's my mail, right? I might actually have a human being who knows about my business, who will try to read that email really quickly, and then they will reply. If this person is a good writer, they basically become a salesperson, right? They're kind of also like customer success or customer support, but until this lead is really a customer, a lot of the time it's just asking questions like, how expensive is this product, or when can I sign up for this? And a lot of the time, really what this is on my website, I just might have an FAQ, right? So really, if I can just automate my FAQ, and also maybe some internal like documents, something that might look like, a sales script sometimes. This would talk to other details about the product, how expensive is it? What's it valuable for? You can even have like case studies. So there's lots of material usually that this person will have access to. Supposed to say case studies, that will make it easier for them to reply to these leads. Now, the core problem with this is that this person, this salesperson, there's a lot of variance here. I could have a really good salesperson. I might have a not so good salesperson. And depending on their abilities, that has a huge impact on my ability to sell. So that's important. Also, if this is an actual human being, it's going to take time, right? If a person sends me a lead and asks a question, basically the salesperson has to look at all this info here before they reply. And then you have to pay them, right? So there's time, right? There's some uncertainty about their ability, and there's the costs of hiring this person. And actually, if you have a good salesperson, it's totally worth it, right? Because if you think about it, if I'm able to really quickly reply to leads, that is worth an enormous amount of money. So a good salesperson is well worth the cost. The issue is that it's hard to scale, right? If I have, maybe 10 emails a day, that's fine. If I start to get 100, then this person really gets bogged down with a lot of busy work that's not actually valuable. It's not very high leverage. And it's also just not fun. Like, responding to emails is not very interesting work most of the time. And that's where AI comes in. Like, that's actually the exciting bit. So basically, the goal is to take what I can out of this process and turn this person into a robot. So if this person becomes a robot or an AI, I can take out a lot of the drudge work. I can increase the speed of responding, right? I could even respond like while they're asleep, which is also another interesting stat. Like, a ton of businesses will just lose leads because they'll get, a message at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday and no one's there to respond. So that's kind of the framework of this. That's why this is all interesting. And again, most AI projects will not produce any money. This, like just responding to leads, this whole system of just responding to people is basically right now the number one way to actually provide value and to get a return on whatever you're building. Okay, that's great. So how do we actually do all this? I'm going to talk about how to do this in make.com. It's a great platform. It's really simple. It's also free to, if you have like a free trial for it. So that's really nice. And basically what I'm going to make is this example here. If we get a new lead or some kind of question, we want to reply to it immediately. So once you go to the platform and log in, you'll see something like this. And most of the stuff, like if you're signing up for the first time, you might have to create new accounts or fill out surveys. You can ignore most of that. It doesn't really matter. You want to get to this screen where you create your first scenario. And then let's think about how we want to map this out. So if I'm running, let's say, like a small business where I sell rubber ducks, I might have it so that customers will reach out to me. They'll ask about my duck inventory, and hopefully I can answer the questions. Maybe I can set up like a sales call. And what's important is that I just want to be able to answer their questions really quickly, and ideally push them towards either closing them as a lead, so turning them into an actual customer, or sometimes I actually want to figure out if they're not a lead, right? Someone might come to me and think that I'm selling rubber crocodiles, but really I'm selling rubber ducks. Okay, so the core thing that matters in make.com is that you can have these things called modules. So you saw just now I pressed this little button here. This allows you to look at a ton of different apps. In this case, the one that we care about, I'm going to start with Gmail. You can also do email. It's basically the same thing. But Gmail has a bunch of different little actions that are tied to my Gmail account. So in this case, I want to be able to watch for new emails. So I'm going to click this thing. Great. Okay, so we have our first module. It's kind of like a little circle here. And another thing you'll notice is that you need to have a connection for this. So I've actually already done this connection, but if I wanted to add it again, you'd see something like this. So like sign in with Google. Basically what this wants to do is be able to look at your emails on your behalf with this AI system. So once I have that connection set up, and by the way, if you click it, it'll kind of look like this. You can sign in. I've already got one working, so I'm not going to do that. But I want to look for certain kinds of emails. So I'm going to look at setting up a filter for my email. And basically, I just want to find emails that fit whatever my category is, or whatever my specific needs are. In this case, I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm just going to look for emails that have the subject, new ducks. And the goal here is just that, I can get tons of emails, but maybe I only care about ones that are from a specific person, or maybe I only care about emails that have a specific subject line. There's a lot of things you can do here just to filter out what you do and don't care about. But I'm going to leave it to that. And then I'm going to start with all emails from now on. This will actually look at previous emails too, but in this case, I'm just going to start it now. Okay, great. So I have my first one that's watching emails. And the next thing I'm going to do is set up an AI module. So this can look kind of complicated, but it's actually really simple. OpenAI is a very well-known AI company. They have all sorts of cool tools that help you, implement AI inside your software, and that's why they're worth so much. In this case, I'm going to look for the OpenAI module here, and I'm going to click Generate a Response. So for this one, okay, it looks like I actually have an old connection that is no longer valid. What's interesting is that you can have multiple connections to these kinds of things. I have another connection as well that should be working. Okay, there we go. And again, like Google, if you want to be able to create a new connection, you can go ahead and click Add. And this has all sorts of instructions on how you can set this up. For this one specifically, you need an API key. That's something that you can actually get through OpenAI. I won't go into that here, but if anyone has questions, just add a comment and I'll try to reply to it. Basically, you pay OpenAI some money. They give you this long string of text, and you can add here so that every time you use it, they'll know who's using the AI features, and they'll charge you a little bit of money. It tends to be extremely cheap. If I reply to 10 emails, it might cost me a penny. So not too bad. So for the rest of the setup here, you can do something called picking a model. I'm just going to go with the default kind of GPT 5.2. By the time you watch this, it might be different because they're updating things so quickly. Basically, this just determines what version of their language model do you want to use. It doesn't matter too much. I can go into more detail probably in future videos. Okay, now, this is where it gets exciting. AI is actually surprisingly easy to use. It's a lot easier than coding. Like I've worked as a software developer for a very long time, and I can tell you this is way better. You just give it plain English instructions, and it'll give you plain English output. So in this case, my goal is to get emails from a prospect, some kind of a lead, and reply to them. That's it. So what I might say is, I'm almost like telling this AI what to do. So imagine I have an intern instead, and I'm telling them what to do. If I was speaking to an intern, I might say, like, you are Josh, a rubber duck sales director. Um, you sell rubber ducks at ducky.co. That might be a real company. I'm not sure. No affiliation. And maybe I'll add additional detail, like you sell for $20 per kilo for yellow ducks and 50 for red ducks. Okay, now write a short and simple email reply to this user as Josh. Save the email. So this is kind of important. Sometimes when you get new information on leads, it's not actually a qualified lead, right? So they might be asking questions that aren't really related to what you're doing. And in that case, you don't want to spend a bunch of time on them. You basically want to let them know that maybe this is not the right product for them. So if the email is not relevant to rubber ducks, let them know they have the wrong contact. Okay, great. So I've just given it a bunch of instructions. I've basically told it the scenario and then instructions specifically to what I want it to do. Now, I also need to provide specifically what the user said. So in this case, I'm expecting an email from a lead, and then I'm generating a response. And to generate an actual good response, I need to know, what did the user say, right? If I just send this, it's not going to have any context and it won't know what's going on. Okay, great. So what I might actually do before I continue is I'm going to try to test to see if this works. So I have my first module, which will look for emails that have new ducks in the subject. And then I have my second module, which should generate an AI response to it. So while that's working, I'm going to see if I can send an email to my account and test this out. It should work, actually. Okay, there we go. So what I was doing just now, it's iterating through some of the old emails, but it eventually found the one that I just sent. So this is from a different account. And I basically said, hello, do you have any ducks? And here's the response. Cool. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm opening up these kind of little bubbles in the top right of each module. Each time you run it, it'll give you the temporary output of whatever it's doing. So in this case, this is the input that it's seeing, right? So I got this email. Here's a snippet. Hello, do you have any ducks? I can even look at the subject, new ducks from me. And then what the AI is going to do is take all that info with my specific instructions, and it should create a response. Let's see. Yeah, so I can look at output. Let's see, response ID. Nice, okay. Yeah, so it says, hi there, yes, we have rubber ducks at Duck.co. Yellow ducks are $20 and red ducks are 50. Great. Okay, cool. So we now have an AI-powered email responder. This is really handy. Now the last step is actually replying to that email. I can capture my new lead. I can reply to it with AI. Now I want to actually send the reply. So I'm going to create another Gmail module, and this one is the reply to an email module. And basically what this is going to do is just send a reply on my behalf. The way that we want to fill this in is it needs to know the thread of the email chain. This is really handy because we actually get the thread when we watch for the email, so I can just copy this in. Reply mode, we don't really have to worry about this for now. I can just leave it all there. And then for text, I'm going to give the full result of this email. So again, this is really simple. There's a lot of ways to improve this. Right now, we're just giving it like raw output. But if I run this, let's see what happens. I'm going to send another email. Okay, there we go. Cool. So my email responder is going again. I can actually even see that, I caught the right email. The AI is going to run again. And I can even look at my output here. So let's see, JD. Cool. Okay, so whatever it was, it got sent. So now actually, if I look at the original email that I sent here, this is what I sent before. It said, hello, do you have any ducks? I want red ones. And then I just got this automatic email back here. So this is pretty cool. One thing to note really quick, it actually included the subject inside my email, which is not great because I don't really want it to have the subject. But otherwise, it had a pretty decent response, right? So this is actually really simple, right? It only took us a few minutes. We probably could have done this in like 20 seconds if I didn't ramble so much. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? In this case, I'm just replying to the first email. If the user, for example, sends another reply back to me, right? Maybe I say, hey, I want red ducks. Ideally, we can keep that conversation going. So there's a ton of different ways we can build this out. We can even tie this into like a knowledge base. For example, if there's a sales script or if there's a whole FAQ section on our own website, we can actually add that kind of information in as well. So for example, instead of just going straight to the AI, we can have a whole section where we, do a request, like an HTTP request to a website. Maybe I go to like, ducky.co and we like look at the whole FAQ and then pass that as information to our AI. But maybe let's start with something really simple. Right now, I'm asking it to write the email. I'm going to actually be a little bit more specific and say, write a simple email reply to the user as Josh. I'm going to say, respond the email text only, no subject. Nice. Okay, so that's pretty much it. There's a ton of pieces that you can build out to this, right? Like again, if I even want to have a more complicated conversation system after this, if we want to add this to like a CRM, there's lots of things that you can build out. And what I love about platforms like this is that you don't need to know anything about software, which is valuable both because it means you can build it faster, but it's really nice because it means that you can have non-technical people that own these kinds of projects. So if this is, like a traditional automation, I'd have to write a bunch of code and then, tell someone how it works and spin up a front end and get it all to work. But because it's so simple just to like click around and understand this, it means that if something changes, right, or maybe if, our price changes or if our email connection changes, anyone that has like even a little bit of experience with computers can figure this out really quickly. So great. I'm going to try to make more videos like this as well as things go on. But let me know if this is helpful. Super open to feedback. And I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Have a great day.